Hello guys, Sir Grandelot here. This video is going to be quite a bit different from my usual content. The main topic is going to be my view on Kafka, her present and future as a character in Honkai Star Rail, but before we make it there, I will have to make a relatively quick detour talking about two other games. Editor's note, it's not going to be a quick detour, viewer discretion is advised. In this video there are not going to be any Excel sheets, damage charts, tier lists or secret illegal text that MiHoYo doesn't want you to know. The background clips are mostly going to be unrelated gameplay, so feel free to do something else while you listen to my attempt at explaining my point of view. Let's start by taking a step back. Back in 1978, when I was still swimming in my father's boat, now we don't need to go that far. When I started playing Genshin Impact during patch 1.2, it was my first step in the world of gacha games, and I've always found the gacha aspect to be fun, as it reminded me a bit of all those roguelike games, where you have randomized runs and you need to adapt your strategy based on what you find. So for me, a gacha game was simply a roguelike game where I didn't know which characters I would be able to get, which weapons I'd be able to find, and what kind of trash artifacts the RNG gods would curse me with. And as a noob in the game genre, I did what most people in the same situation would do. I went on YouTube to find information about characters and game mechanics. And it didn't take me very long to find content from the usual suspects, providing me with vital information such as this character is broken, that character is busted, this character is insane, but only in this team, and the likes. So putting aside an endless amount of content that was devoid of any informative value, a message that I kept hearing was, it's better to build many characters because with a wider roster, it's easier to handle all sorts of challenges that the game is going to throw at you. This idea made sense to me, so I spent my first few months pulling for and building a fairly large roster of characters. Most of them were at Constellation 0 and didn't have their signature weapon, and since the leveling up process took a fairly large amount of daily raising, I had very little left for things like artifacts. This is called horizontal investment, by the way, favoring a wider roster of characters instead of focusing exclusively on a handful of them. And a few things started to bother me though. The first one is that out of all my characters, I was always using the same 4 that allowed me to handle anything. And I only picked an extra 4 of my other characters once every 2 weeks to clear the Abyss, which requires 2 teams. Meaning that all of my raising that I had very thinly spread among all the characters on my account was giving me back very little value. And the second issue was that none of my characters felt really great to play, especially when compared to other people. In gacha games, you should always be very careful about comparing yourself with other players, because everything in the game revolves around RNG, cash, or both. But as I was comparing myself with, similar players, I noticed that my favorite characters were really underwhelming. And I decided to do something different. I saved Primogems for a few patches, and when in Azuma Ride I got Raiden, her Constellation Shoe and her signature weapon. In addition to that, for probably close to 8 months, I did nothing but grind the artifact domain designed for her. And the result of that is, I had an extremely well built Raiden that was giving me a lot more joy than any of the characters I had built before her. The more raising I spent, looking for better artifacts for her and optimizing their team, the stronger she became. It's fair to say she trivialized all the game content for me, since during most of the fights, my only doubt was, I wonder if she will one-shot everything with the first hit of her slash, or if I will have to use a charge attack as well. And with her on screen I was essentially living a power fantasy, the kind of experience where, as you approach the enemies, the final boss music starts to play for them. A quick detour, because this is around the time when someone will say, where is the fun if you remove the challenge? Where do we draw the line to that? And apart from people who intentionally use a meme team or a trash character to farm YouTube views, the vast majority of players would prefer to have characters they like perform well rather than poorly. And if you play Genshin Impact, you're probably familiar with Hu Tao. Does pairing her with the Shinchu make her too strong and should be avoided to maintain a certain level of challenge, or is it acceptable? How about Hu Tao double Hydro with Yelan? How about giving her Constellation 1 and Staff of Oma? You see where I'm going. For me, the cries of I don't pull for that character of Constellation because it would remove all the challenge from the game are the 21st century version of the Fox and the Sour Grapes story. But let's go back to the main topic, because we are several minutes in and I have not even talked about Honkai Star Rail yet. After my Raiden experience, I decided that I would invest vertically in my characters, meaning that I would save for extended period of time, only pull for characters that I liked a lot, and make sure that I could get their signature weapon, any early constellations that provided them with a huge performance boost and stuff like that. And my enjoyment of the game grew tenfold. I had fewer unused characters, and those that I was using more often could benefit from months of targeted artifact farming before switching to a new character. I've never felt the Abyss to be challenging, even while I was doing full clears with 4-star characters. And having Omega crack the limited characters gave me the opportunity of assembling teams that included some characters that I really liked, but were on the lower end of the performance spectrum. You may remember the amount of cope around the time of Dia's release, when content creators were desperately trying to say she's actually pretty good, just play her in a team with Bennett, Kazuka, and Ling. Around that time I made a full Abyss clear using a team with Bennett, Kazuka, and Ling and an empty slot. So yeah, she would have fit that team pretty well. There are some characters, especially among the 4 stars, with really beautiful designs and animation, but fairly limited or questionable kits. And when your main damage dealer one-shots everything, you can afford to play anyone you like. At the beginning of the video I mentioned that I was going to make a detour about 2 games. The second one is Reverse 1999. It's a relatively new gacha game that has been around for half a year in China and a couple of months on global. And I've been enjoying it a lot. The art style is phenomenal, there are a lot of fun and interesting characters. Ever since I installed the game, I wanted to have a team centered around Sotheby. There's a few people who play Reverse in my Discord, but if I've never played the game, just know that Sotheby is a healer who doesn't rank particularly well in most tier lists, and that would be very bad news if I cared about tier lists. But I used all my early game pools to get her, I invested a lot of energy, it's not called energy, but you know what I mean, to make her reach maximum insight, and proceeded to build teams around her. And I have very few characters because she's the only rate-up character I pulled for. But those that I have, and that I like, are all very high levels. And yeah, I'm missing out on some fun gimmicks from low-rated characters, but prioritizing characters that I like and maxing their performance gives me way more joy than building a gimmick character that is fun for 10 minutes and for a YouTube video. Opening the game and being welcomed by Sotheby always makes my brain release a lot of happy chemicals. Now it's about time to relocate and finally start talking about Honkai Star Rail, yeah! As you probably know, the vast majority of my Jades and resin have been spent on Zeely. She's by far my favorite character in terms of design and gameplay, and she's voiced by my favorite voice actress in the game.
Yeah, the #1 person on the leaderboards for Cielo Land is Sir Grind-a-Lot.
There was a time during my Memory of Chaos rounds where out of 8 characters, I used to have 2 using the Quantum set and 6 using the Garden Wolverine Snow set, because I didn't have anything else available. Was I being meta? Not even close. And it probably took me longer than other people to fully clear Memory of Chaos 10, because my non-Zeely team was in absolute Cope-Zilla mode. Yet there wasn't a single day during which I would want to spend energy for other characters. Any small improvement in her build, even just a single attack percentage roll, was worth it for me. Every point of energy I spent for her and her team gave me a lot of joy, with my favorite character instantly erasing from the screen anything that dared to step in front of her. And eventually I reached a point where I wanted to stop using Chinchue in my second Memory of Chaos team, because I value my time. And a few months into the game I decided to pull for Kafka and her Lightcone. And then an extra 40 or so pulls and a lot of luck gave me her Eidolon Chu. And needless to say, around the time of her release, she completely raised enemies in Memory of Chaos, because that's MiHoYover's modus operandi, to promote new characters. Back then my Kafka build was 4 Quantum and 2 Sealing Space Station. Far from ideal, but not bad, and the stats were pretty reasonable. I didn't spend energy in the Lightning Cavern because I was pretty sure that we would eventually get a relic set designed for DOT characters, and patch 1.5 gave us Kafka's best-in-slot set both in the Caverns and Simulated Universe. And I had a ton of fuel saved up, and it didn't take me long to equip Kafka with the 2 builds, both of them very solid. One with load speed, to be used in teams with Asta, and one with higher speed for Asta-less teams. And that's when my issues with Kafka started. I believe it's undeniable that, at least so far, there has been some sort of destruction bias in Honkai Star Rail, and I believe it's mainly due to bad balancing by MiHoYo. The idea behind the extraction characters is that there is some drawback in their kit, but they make up for that with their damage output. Blade needs to lose hit points to do his stuff, and when that happens he deals a lot of damage with minimal skill point investment, while also self-healing. Pretty cool. Honkai Star gargles skill points and in return dishes out crazy damage. Jinliu drains some hit points from her team, then proceeds to one-shot the universe. In theory, these are all good ideas, but in order to make the characters easy and enjoyable to play, the drawbacks that should characterize their kit are very easy to play around, and the result is just crazy damage output, especially for the latter two. One of Kafka's problems is an issue of game design as well. Before I dig a bit deeper, let me do a current year trigger warning. You don't need to follow meta, pull for the characters you like, you can use any character you want to clear the content on the game. You have to make that kind of statement in advance, because any minor critique for a popular character in a gacha game is eventually going to bring out the crew of "I want to pull for her because I like her," which is a sentiment that I 100% approve, by the way. But you can like a character while at the same pointing out issues in her game design. There is no need to go through the 5 stages of grief for a video game character. I was one of the people excited about Dia's releasing Genshin Impact. Then I saw her leaked kit, I cringed really hard, while I was trying to convince myself, fear not, she's going to be reworked for sure. That was the sound of a sub, by the way. And yeah, the rework never happened. As for the recording of this video, Kafka and her DOT teams are in a very weird spot. I would say there are 3 major forms of permanent content in the game. Memory of Chaos, Simulated Universe, and things like bosses, calyxes, weekly bosses. But bosses and calyxes can be cleared on autoplay by virtually any team, so let's ignore their existence for a minute. In the Simulated Universe, Kafka feels like a god. This is because the Nihility path is giga-busted, and Kafka being able to benefit from all the blessings and triggering multiple times the resonance path is bonkers. Back when the Swarm Disaster was released, it was unbelievable to see how easily my Kafka team could go through content that I was finding way more challenging with Zilli. And there is something undeniable about the Simulated Universe though. Your characters matter less than your path, Curious and Blessing. With Fushwana I was able to solo clear the highest difficulty of the Disaster Swarm on full auto. And you can find solo runs for nearly every character on YouTube. The stuff we pick up along the way carries us harder than anything else. I would not advise anyone to pull a character just because they're good in the Simulated Universe. That would be like pulling for Venti because his crowd control is useful twice a year. Totally not something that happened to me back when I was listening to the content creator saying he was meta. That would be silly, it didn't happen to me. Let's talk about Memory of Chaos then. Is Kafka good enough to clear it? Absolutely yes. I've never had issues getting full stars in Memory of Chaos 10, not even on autoplay. But does she feel good to play? Do I get the impression that the jades and energy that I've spent on her are converted into better game performance? Not so much. Damage over time's effects in games have traditionally been difficult to balance, because if they deal too much damage or they tick too fast, they become OP and they make it pointless to run direct damage sources. And if they're slow or do not deal enough damage, they feel like a waste of time. I jokingly said in my Discord that the difference between my Zilli and my Kafka is that when I set everything up for my Zilli, she deals over 100k damage with her skill, followed by another 100k damage from Resurgence, followed by 200k plus from their ultimate, and occasionally another Resurgence proc. With Kafka you set everything up, going through your support and or your second DOT unit, then you use her elemental skill and you see 40k damage on the screen, you try not to cry, you cry a lot. Sure, her ultimate against multiple enemies deals more damage, but my level 60 Argenti, with traces at 5 and Imeko's Lightcon was dealing significantly more damage than her. With my Kafka's Burst hitting around 120k damage on a good day, while Argenti was dropping 170k at level 60, and he's now doing more than twice as much. In theory, Kafka's kit is balanced out by the fact that during enemies' turns they're going to receive damage again, and each time Kafka acts, she can trigger the damage again. Unfortunately, in a game where the amount of rewards we get is based on how quickly we can clear the enemies, which kind of character is going to kill the enemies quicker? One who deals high front-loaded damage, or one who deals it over time and also relies on the enemy acting enough times within each cycle? The answer to that is really simple, and to me shows that MiHoYo so far has done a very underwhelming job at balancing the damage output of DOT teams and how their core mechanic works. For example, let's say Jinyu is a bit hungover, and with her skill she only deals 100k damage to kill the gorilla and end the cycle. Kafka and her friends will only deal 60k, with the added benefit that an extra 60k will happen during the gorilla's following turn, for a total of 120k, yay! It just so happens that the gorilla's next action is in the next cycle, so you just wasted a whole cycle. If you're still within full star, it doesn't matter, but if you're missing a star, it definitely does. And this is an issue that has happened to me countless times during my 0 cycle attempt runs, forcing me to restart a run. Again, let me repeat that a well-built Kafka is going to clear her side of the Memory of Chaos fast enough for max reward. She's a character who is very easy to build, as she only needs attack percentage, speed, and a bit of effect hit rate. But it's very easy to reach the ceiling of her performance, and notice how far behind she is compared to other DPS characters at similar levels of investment. When Maizili was still E2, she was running circles around Kafka, even against multiple waves on enemy in Memory of Chaos. There are a couple of ways to make her perform better outside of using Wallet Kun and going deeper into her Eidolons, and I'm not a huge fan of either option. Option A is simply not running a sustain unit. You will find a lot of 0 cycles like this on YouTube, with the DPS character being virtually anyone in the game, including the likes of Herta, Arlan and so on. You run 2 Harmony and 1 Nihility, or 3 Harmony supports, you Giga buff the damage dealer or dealers, and you hope that none of your characters will get focused and die, in which case you go full Chinchua mode and click retry endlessly until you succeed. I value my time, so I prefer to use a sustain unit in my teams. Option B is to build characters specifically to abuse enemies' weaknesses. And the reason why I don't like this approach is that we will have to keep on building characters who are there just for the break effect. And I don't really like a rock, paper, scissors approach in games, because if you're facing rock and you're paper, you don't really feel like you have achieved much. And if you only have scissors, it can feel pretty bad. This system is present in most, if not all, gacha games, because impulsive pieces of paper are likely to pull for a rock when we're forced to face the scissors. If we were able to brute force anything with any character, it would feel like the whole weakness system didn't serve any purpose, and it goes to show that designing game mechanics that can please players and accounting teams is not easy. But Kafka feeling so meh to play against enemies without lightning weakness is a huge bummer for me. Also, what's going to happen when we get a new limited lightning character who is a direct damage dealer? We have just seen a trailer from MiHoYo in which they revealed Acheron, who is very purple looking and carries a big gas katana with her. Now, of course, we have no idea at all what kind of character she may end up being. We don't check leaks here, because they spoil the integrity of the game, and they could negatively impact a small indie company like MiHoYo. But what if she was a Nihility character who deals large chunks of direct damage? Do you think that a new limited damage dealer would be worse than older ones? After what we have recently seen with Jinyu and Argenti? As of today, I consider Kafka to be a competent character who can clear all the content currently in the game, but who doesn't feel particularly good for hyper-investing. And I don't want this video to sound like a "watch this before pulling for Kafka" clickbait thing, far from it. I'm just trying to warn people who like her a lot and who would like to heavily invest into her and go deeper and deeper into her Eidolons, that she may not be as worthy as other DPS characters. Dan Heng 5 stars Eidolon Chu is incredible and well worth getting if you like the guy, while Kafka's Eidolons, especially the early ones, don't really feel as impactful. And it's not like farming relics 24/7 for an extra 5 or 10% attack is going to make a huge difference. Things may change, of course, and what could turn the tide may be other characters. One of the reasons why I pulled for Kafka, outside of the mob me factor, is that I've always considered her future-proof. At the moment she's the best DOT damage dealer, but once we get new DOT characters, there may be a scenario where new characters apply dots that hit like a truck, and Kafka will be the ideal support / damage enabler, by triggering them reliably. Time will tell, and only MiHoYo knows what they're planning to do with DOT teams in the future. It's an interesting playstyle that works as a fun alternative compared to charge ultimate, one-shot everything, go. But the way it's implemented right now isn't particularly satisfying to play for me. I also don't want to be on maximum hopium and think that a new character at the horizon is going to change everything. Geo in Genshin Impact has been in a very questionable spot for a very long time, and people have been coping with, don't worry, there will be a Geo rework next patch to synergize with something, for years, and it never happens. And on the other hand, some people assumed that Erudition was a path destined to be relevant after the release of some destruction characters who could deal with multiple enemies. Then Argenti was released, and now we have folks going full quantum physics analysis trying to explain the case scenarios in which the shiny destruction character they just pulled a patch or two ago is still top of the pack. The last 48 hours on Reddit have been extremely entertaining, let's leave it at that. On a positive note, one could argue that Kafka is a very free-to-play friendly character, no Eidolons needed. Some of the most synergistic characters in the game for her teams are all 4 stars that aren't really used by anyone else outside of the omnipresent Tingyun, so if you really like Kafka, you definitely have my seal of approval pulling for her. Do I regret pulling for Kafka? Regret is a strong word, and the only two limited characters that I actually regret pulling so far in any gacha game have been Venti and Eula. For Kafka, I would say that I'm feeling a bit blue-balled. Her performance is nowhere near close to my Zili when comparing them at stages of the game when their investment was similar. And if I hadn't pulled for Kafka and coped a little bit longer with the Chinchue, my mental sanity would have probably taken a hit, but I would have had enough jades to pull on for Jinliu. Unfortunately, I had to skip our Ice Queen because she was unfortunately enough to run together with Zili, and Zili Eidolons will be a priority for me until her last one. If you really like Kafka and you just want a character who can comfortably clear all the content in the game, then you don't need to worry about tier lists. She's going to carry you around no problem, and who knows what will happen in the future with new DOT character releases. If you're looking forward to a giga-busted character that will make you feel like a god among mortals, then maybe you should reconsider your plans though. When Zili got her run, the Member of Chaos was designed for Jinliu, but it was also a very easy cycle for Zili. My guess is that when Kafka gets her run, there will be a side in which she will shine, and we will see plenty of Zero Cycle showcases on YouTube. She's still busted! Clickbait thumbnails and stuff like that. But as someone with a Kafka in the top 1% on Zili Land, I can confidently tell you that she doesn't perform as well as her best showcases make it out to be. That will be all for today. This video ended up being way longer than expected, so thank you for sticking around this far. Remember that there is a giveaway going on for free Jade passes / Welkin passes, whatever you want to call it, and a Giga Battle Pass. And you can find the giveaway video on my channel. If the editor remembers it, I will put a link to it in the video description. By the way, I'm my own editor, feels bad, man. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comment, and if all goes well, I will see you on Monday during my stream, starting at 8 AM Tokyo time. Enjoy your weekend, guys. Take care.